All right, everyone, it's that happy day of the Iowa caucus. Now, on the Republican side, of course, Donald Trump is already the nominee because he's running unopposed. It doesn't matter if Bill Weld is supposedly in the race because half the states aren't even holding their primaries, so it's bullshit. By the way, that's one of the keys to re-election for an incumbent. We've got to look at the Democrats, though. It is impossible to say for sure who's going to win the Iowa caucus. Let's get that right out of the way. It doesn't matter how good you are at predicting things. Iowa polls are notoriously sketchy. One of their main polls, apparently they accidentally didn't ask about Buttigieg on one of their robocalls, so they scrapped the whole poll. So we're actually one poll short. And so we've got two recent polls that say Sanders is ahead. We've got two that say Biden is ahead. There's a fifth poll aggregated, but it's outdated enough so that we don't need to listen to it. So it's anybody's guess, and when you look at the other numbers there, it is technically within the realm of possibility that Warren or even Buttigieg could pull off a win. Now, what do I expect? If I had to tell you what my best guess is, what do I expect is most likely to happen? I think that Sanders' rise is a fluke. On a national level, it's higher than it will be in Iowa. You've got to understand that in a caucus situation like this, you're going to get more late breakers, potentially. And I think they're going to break for Biden, and I'll tell you why. If a person hasn't made up their mind despite the fact that Bernie Sanders is most recently peaking, keep in mind, recency bias applies. More people have experienced what Sanders is all about, and yet a lot of them still have not climbed aboard. That shows, in my mind, reluctance. It shows skepticism towards what he's offering. Could be totally wrong, but this actually happened in 2016 with Trump. Trump was on the rise. He was ahead, arguably, in Iowa, according to several of the polls. I expected him to win. Did I not predict that Trump would win the Iowa Republican caucus in 2016? He didn't. He lost by a couple of points to Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz didn't have the tailwind. He was only ahead in, I think, one of four polls. There was no reason to speculate that he would win, but he did anyway. People defaulted to a person who ideologically was more in line with Iowa. When I think of Iowa, Biden ideologically just has more in common with the situation there. I realize that that's not universal, but the idea that Farmer John is clamoring for socialism, I just don't accept that argument. Now, there is almost as big an odds that Sanders wins. Between the two of them, it's like a 99% chance. There's the outside chance that all recent polls are statistical flukes and that Buttigieg out of nowhere manages to eke out a win by a half a point. Is it likely? No. Here's what to watch for. This is the deeper analysis part, because again, prediction-wise, it's a lot harder. I'll make my prediction because to stand on principle, I'm predicting Biden. But that's really just a principle prediction. In New Hampshire, it'll be easy. Sanders will win New Hampshire hands down. So keep in mind, in a few days when that happens, expect Bernie Sanders to walk away by double digits, probably. He'll get the late breakers and everyone else. If he didn't win New Hampshire, his campaign would be over the same day. If he even comes close, like if Biden comes in a close second New Hampshire, it's going to make Sanders real pissed off. Trust me. New Hampshire's like the upside-down version of Vermont with more guns and less hippies. That's basically what it is. Actually, I've thought of moving to New Hampshire before. It's a nice state, actually. The White Mountains, the Green Mountains. They're all mountains. They're all heavily forested, scarcely populated. Be closer to the ocean. That might be nice. And there's less Vermonters around to try to convert me to eating granola and soy products or something. I'm just joking. I like Vermont. I have Vermont patriotism, but that's the same thing. New Hampshire and Vermont were once the same anyway. Anyway, what do I expect for analysis? Let's analyze the different possibilities and what happens thereafter. Number one would be a Biden win, and that's what I'm predicting, but again, that's the loosest, most tentative possible fucking prediction, and I probably won't be able to be up live for the results, because of course I'm in Amsterdam, there's a 6-hour time difference, so fuck me in the ass. Not literally. With Joe Biden, if he wins, I think it gives him a tailwind. It shows that he can win, which is something that I think a lot of his own fans question at times. This gives him South Carolina. He's already ahead there. He's been ahead by double digits in most of the polling. He's favored heavily. Winning one of the first two states would give him the boost he needs. Gets that. Probably gets Nevada. He's been handily ahead in every poll there, although by smaller margins. That gives him 3 out of 4, with Sanders coming away only with the state right next to his home state. If this happens, I would predict that Biden on Super Tuesday kind of seals the deal already. He'll be well out ahead in the delegate count, but even more, he'll be well out ahead in terms of simple electability. The fact is that part of the reason Biden has been the front runner all along, except in one recent poll that had Sanders ahead by 2 points nationally, and one poll months ago that had Warren ahead by a point. With those two exceptions, Biden has consistently been the front runner, sometimes by double digits. Part of that is the illusion of inevitability. The illusion that he's inevitable has buoyed up his inevitability, in other words. It's a very, very strange, paradoxical situation. If, however, Bernie Sanders wins, okay? He goes into New Hampshire, he wins that, probably. He's got the first two states. It is possible he will win Nevada, therefore. If he gets 3 out of the first 4, he then goes on to become the front runner. Biden looks considerably less than inevitable, having only won a deep southern state that's not really in play on a national level. Biden then, in order to become nominee, has to wage a war of attrition state by state and hope to pander to minority voters, which is something he does not want to do. He doesn't want to have to pander at all. He wants to be the moderate voice. Now, if they continue to be like first and second in all the first 4 states, through attrition, other candidates will begin to drop out, and there's where the uncertainty lies. The uncertainty is, let's say that after Super Tuesday, it's just not looking good for Buttigieg, he drops out. That means all of his supporters have to find a new home. Who does he endorse? Because that matters. Ideologically, what are those voters looking for? My gut instinct is that Warren voters ideologically would be more likely to fall into the Sanders camp, but there's too much bad blood and that may not happen. Klobuchar fans definitely would fall into the Warren camp. There's almost no debate over that. Buttigieg voters, I think, would like Biden more than anyone else. But again, it's not certain, and it's certainly not certain that he would get his endorsement. Now, let's say Warren pulls off a surprise win. This is our 1 in 100 sort of situation. Let's say Warren pulls off a win. She's done well enough in recent polls in New Hampshire, despite the fact that she's collapsed on a national stage, so that she could win there, end up going into Super Tuesday, grab a couple states, and stay in until the end. Having a third wheel Warren towards the end would doom Bernie Sanders' campaign. Having Warren in long term would make it impossible for him to win. Biden would win, even by small amounts, incrementally across the country, slowly sapping the life out of leftism. Let's say that Buttigieg manages to surprise us. He pulls off a win in Iowa. Now, I would say there's a good chance he ekes out 3rd place. I think that Buttigieg is likely to knock Warren down to 4th. And I hope that happens, because watching the look on her face when she's completely ass-blasted over that and slumps even further in the polls would be great. Even if it's good for Bernie Sanders, who I don't want to be nominated because I'd rather see Demented Joe face off against Trump, watching Warren practically break down over it it's worth it. It's worth the risk of a Bernie Sanders nomination just to see Warren cry. If Buttigieg manages to win Iowa, I don't think at this point he's in 5th place. I don't think he can get enough of a bump to stay in after Super Tuesday anyway. He'll be lucky to win 1 state out of the entire first slew of states. A third of the country will have voted by the end of Super Tuesday. If Buttigieg has a state, I'll be surprised. Honestly, I think it's a 3-person race, with third wheel Warren likely to win a state or 2 here and there, and that's really about it. I think mostly it's the tale of Biden and Sanders, but again, I could be totally wrong, because Iowa polling is notoriously bad. We're short a poll. That doesn't help. And we've still got a packed field. The other part is that if you've got a packed field, it's hard to tell where the votes for those other candidates will go if somebody does drop out. Now, if they're smart, my expectation would be there's really only 2 people to choose from. They're going to endorse Biden or Sanders because they're going to hedge their bets with one or the other. They'd be crazy to throw their support behind somebody else and potentially rob themselves of a role in a potential administration. That's how they're thinking. The other part is that because they've gotten rid of the superdelegate system or something like that, now there's no reason for anyone with the money to stay in to drop out if they think they can get 1 or 2 delegates down the road. So you might have a packed race all the way through. Biden could win and never even hit 40 in the polling, in the national polling. Sanders could do the same thing. I think it's basically a 2-man race at this point. So my rough expectation, and it is the roughest, barest prediction, so it's really not even a quote me on it situation. I think Biden will do it with an underwhelming total, because I expect that Iowa will buck the trend as it usually does of going with the person who appears to be in the best position. Sanders is arguably slightly further ahead in the 2 polls where he's ahead. Again, it's Biden plus 2 or 6, and then Sanders plus 7 in both of his polls. That gives a slight Sanders advantage, number 1. Number 2, he's had the tailwind, although I think he is leveling out in national polling. Therefore, you'd think that he'd be the one to do it, but again, I think that there is a reluctant vote in there that is not sold on leftism, that's afraid of leftism, in fact, won't likely support him at large levels, that I think if their turnout is high enough, they end up going for Biden. And I think that they buoy him up, they manage to get him ahead in the state. But it could be that Sanders pulls off a 20-point win. This wouldn't be that big a statistical anomaly with Iowa polling. We've got much better a picture in the next 3 states. I expect Sanders to win New Hampshire. That's almost a guarantee. I expect Biden to win South Carolina. Nevada may be close. We'll have to wait and see what happens in Iowa first, because that could help or harm the front-runner, which is Biden by several points there. Warren, if she pulls off a surprise win, yeah, she's got the possibility. She could win Nevada, but I just don't think that that's likely. I think that at this point, I would give, if you gave me $1, like let's do the poker style betting here, I would put 55 on Joe Biden, and I'd put 44 on Sanders, and I'd put 1 on other, which would basically be Buttigieg, I guess. Probably more than Warren. So it's more difficult, certainly, right now with a packed field than it will be. Even by Super Tuesday, we'll probably have a much better idea. I'll be able to make my bets on each state then. That'll be, by the way, a larger video. I'll probably sit there and rant for half an hour. Huzzah for those of you that are into such a thing. At some point, my voice gets tired. And again, unfortunately, I probably won't get to see the live results because I'm here. I would have to stay up till, 2 or 3 a.m.? Yeah, it's just not going to happen, dude. Like, maybe when I was 20-something, I'm in my 30s now, I don't think that that's happening. That's about all. Peace out.